right? Now your teacher says that what? In what? Theory is better than law. Now, is that a true statement or false statement based on what we just discussed? So look, we just made Advitya's law based on his observations of a rabbit coming into his back garden. And over 1 month, he saw that the average of the time that the rabbit comes into the garden is 6 o'clock and 10 minutes. Sometimes it was 6:09, sometimes it was 6:11, but mostly it was 6:10. So he took the average at 6:10. So he made a law, Advitya's law. This particular rabbit, and he has a picture of the rabbit, and he has the name of that rabbit, Rabbititis indicasus, whatever, or Rabbititis adviticasus, right? So he makes the law. Now, your teacher's saying that theory is better than law. Now look up what a theory is.
It is a system of ideas intended to explain something, especially based on a general principle that is independent of things to be explained.
Okay. So, a system of ideas that is
Intended to explain something.
explain something,
Yeah. Especially based on some other general principles.
some other general principle.
So those principles could be law that is independent of things that you're trying to explain.
Yeah, but here the definition of inference, inductive reasoning is that
It's the inference based on inference of general laws from particular instances.
yeah. So the laws are coming from particular instances, and the theory.
Yes. Theory is like it's a system of understanding to explain something, especially one that is based on general principles or laws independent of the things to be explained.
So the theory is a function of laws, and
But one is coming from in particular instances. This is just
no, but you see, the theory is a function of laws, but the laws are established by particular instances that have been studied. And the teacher is saying the theory is better than law. Does that make sense?
Depends probably on what context. You know certain laws, but
No, but the theory is being derived from laws.
Yeah, exactly.
And she's saying the theory is better than law.
Correct.
but you're trying to come up with new laws. Like when theory gets converted into law more, then like when you have something new to learn, that is like something new has come up, established as law. It's a process that might tend to a law.
No, but see, the law is
The basis.
the basis.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Theory is basically a theory is an interpretation based on other people's scientific observation, and they made a law because they said the rabbit. Vidya said the rabbit comes into my garden on the average at 6:10 every day, at least for 30 days, right? Now he might extend his experiment to, did the rabbit come during winter? Answer, no. It only comes in summer, And he says, wait a minute, well, how come this is? And then he finds out that the rabbits hibernate in the wintertime. They go to sleep in some hole. So therefore he has to limit his law to, in this period from starting February 28th to October 15th, the rabbit came at 6:10 every day on the average. But from October 10th to February, whatever, I didn't see the rabbit at all. So that law is limited to that particular period of time. Okay.
So it looks like but if you have to put in underground, what I think that
No, but the question is the teacher's statement correct, that theory is better than law?
no.
Why not?
Yeah, because theory is actually coming based off the laws. So there must be some laws. So we can call it so nature. Nature's
Basically,
laws.
the theory is simply an interpretation based on the laws.
Law, yes. And laws means not the human-made laws. The laws are nature's laws. So people, like scientists, trying to infer from the nature's laws and make and create a theory and make their laws. So it's a from nature's or God's laws to the human laws.
Can they make a theory without the laws?
No.
No, you say. According to their definition. According to their definition. They can't make the theory without the law. So why would theory be... I can understand why she said that. Theory is better than law. Law is, like Advitya's law, is specific to the rabbit. But the theory would be general for everything. Yeah. Okay? That's why she said that. Right? Okay. Did she say that? Yeah. You see, so I didn't know. I wasn't there, right? But I understood why she's saying it now. Now, is that true? Well, not exactly, because it's all based on observation. Now, what do we know about observation? No, observations, they're writing it down. Observations, they're seeing something, they write it down. So Advitya saw the rabbit coming every day into his garden. Then he started noting down what time it came. So sometimes it came at 6 hours, 6:09, and sometimes it came at 6:11. But most of the time it came at 6:10. So he made a law based on that. From February so-and-so to October so-and-so, rabbit came on the average at 6:10. That's his law. He was based on observation. But then he observed that the rabbit didn't come at all between the end of October and the middle of February. Why? Because it hibernated, right? So this is his law. Okay. Now, what do we know about observation from Vedic knowledge? Limited by our senses. Senses are imperfect, right? So no matter how good we observe, we're going to make some mistakes. Right? Yeah.
It might be
Might be
different rabbits coming on different days.
a different rabbit coming, right?
Because, but you cannot differentiate. So
Yeah, they all rabbits, like all Chinese look alike, all rabbits look alike, right? But actually, that's not true. All Chinese don't look alike. That's only an assumption. It's not really true. Yeah, all Chinese speak Chinese, but wait a minute. There's 1,000 dialects of Chinese. And one Chinaman can't understand the other Chinaman because it's a different dialect. So these are assumptions that people make that are actually not true. So, therefore, they call that science, but actually it's an imperfect science because it's based on human observation. No matter how much you want to perfect your observation, there's still going to be mistakes. So it's not, and then whatever laws you make, you see, just like Advitya's law, is it a universal law for every type of rabbit everywhere in the world, everywhere in the universe? No, it's not. Like, for example, birth, old age, disease, and death. Is that something universal everywhere in the universe? Yes. Even the devas, they get old, they get sick, and they die. So, but Advitya's law is very, very particular to a certain set of conditions. You have to live in Samamish, and it's only between February and October. And
Only in Advaita love.
yeah, only from Advitya's window. Only from looking from Advitya's window. If we were looking from the neighbor's window, it might be different, you see. So this is the problem with observation. It depends on a lot of particular conditions. And then the theory you're looking at a whole different, all, Aditya's law and Augustia's law. Augustia's law is not the rabbit, it's when the slugs come out, right? And then Krishna's law, it's when the mosquitoes come out.
I hate like tiny insects the most. When the snails come.
Yeah, or the snails. So you see, then someone looks at all these laws and they try and make a theory out of them, right? So you see how imperfect science is going to be. And it's all based on observation, and we make many mistakes through observation because our senses are imperfect. Okay, but yet there are certain things that are constant, like the carbon cycle. And now we're going to study the nitrogen cycle. These things are constant. These things are predictable everywhere. At least on the earth, it's predictable. But there's a good possibility that the same thing is happening on every planet in the universe. But we can't say that for sure because we're not living on other planets. But on this planet, we know for sure that there's a carbon cycle, a nitrogen cycle, a phosphorus cycle, and a water cycle. We know for sure. And it's based on the law of conservation of energy. What does the law of conservation of energy say? Again, Augustia.
It says energy cannot be created or destroyed, it can be
Okay. So that means what? Now, that's the scientists, but they don't say the next thing. What does that mean in practical terms? If you can't create something, you can't destroy it. It can only be transformed. It's eternal. You see. Now we have one thing that the scientists recognize as being eternal. All you need is that one thing to prove that God exists. I'm going to show you how now. See, now we're going to use different methods of proving to dummies that God exists.
I want to show this presentation in the class, but I don't know if it's allowed.
First, let's understand it. Then we'll show it. Okay. So, for example, if energy, and by the law of energy, you can't create it or destroy it, well, carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen are three substances, when combined, make what's called hydrocarbons, and they're called organic elements. They're organic substances. They're organic things. Like anything organic means it's made of carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen. Right? I'm sorry, wrong. Carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Those are organic chemicals, right? So one organic chemical is lavender oil. Another organic chemical is jasmine oil. They're only made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Okay. So, and by the way, is there a hydrogen cycle? Is there a hydrogen cycle, Prabhu? Check that. Yeah. Be interesting to know. Okay. Well, there's the water cycle. That includes hydrogen and oxygen. So. Okay. So now the nitrogen cycle. And let's go to the next slide. So nitrogen is 78% of the atmosphere, or the air, is nitrogen, right? 78%. So, and that's, there is a hydrogen cycle. There is. Okay. So this is very important. There's a hydrogen cycle, there's a carbon cycle, and is there an oxygen cycle? There is. Okay.
Looks like almost everything has a cycle. There's ozone cycle, methane cycle, helium cycle.
It has to be, because it says energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can just be transformed. These are all energies. You can say
Sodium, calcium, iron, everything
everything has
has a cycle.
a cycle. Excellent. Excellent. You see why I said last week that we have to start with the law of conservation of energy. It's very important because they're defining it. They don't say it's eternal, but you can infer it because you can't create it, you can't destroy it. That means you can never get rid of it. And there's no telling when it started and when it's going to end, right? And it's a cycle. So a cycle, it's a closed circle. It's not open-ended. It's like a straight line is also eternal because you don't know where it started from, you don't know where it's going to end. It can just keep going like that in both directions. So, but the cycle is even more of a closed thing, right? You don't know where it started, where it ended, but it just keeps going around and around, right? Okay, so the nitrogen cycle, when there's rain and lightning, the lightning fixes nitrogen. Remember, the first part of the nitrogen cycle is fixation. We already covered that earlier. The transfer, wait a minute. Oh yeah. Fixation means the process of converting nitrogen to a more usable form. But what's the most usable? No, it doesn't explain. Wait. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't turn the page right. Okay, fixation. Fixate. Go to the next one, and we'll come back to this. Fixation is the first step in the nitrogen cycle. First, nitrogen is in the air, but human beings can't use it. Okay, nitrogen is in the air, but human beings can't fix it. In order to be cannot use it. In order to be able to use it, it has to be transformed into a different form. That's called fixation. So gaseous nitrogen, which cannot be used by living beings, needs to be converted to a more usable form through a process called fixation. This can be done in three ways. One, biologically. Nitrogen gas diffuses into the soil from the atmosphere, and species of bacteria convert this nitrogen to ammonium ions, NH4, which can be used by plants. Legumes such as clover and lupins. So we have plenty of clover growing at the farm. Plenty of it, growing naturally. Are often grown by farmers because they have nodules in their roots that contain nitrogen-fixing bacteria. So the first way that nitrogen can be converted from the air to a usable form, because air is everywhere. It's even in the earth, right? Air permeates everything. So the nodules on the roots of clover plants and lupin plants capture that nitrogen, and they because they have what's called nitrogen fixing bacteria in the soil, and it captures that nitrogen in the nodules. Nodules are like parts of the root of the plant. The second way nitrogen in the air is transformed is through lightning, whenever there's a rainstorm and lightning. So lightning converts atmospheric nitrogen into ammonia and nitrate, NO3, that enters soil with rainfall. So when the rain falls and there's lightning, it converts the nitrogen into either ammonia and a thing called nitrate. So instead of NO2, which is nitrogen gas, it becomes nitrate, yes, NO3. Transformed. Yes. So the scientists learned how to convert nitrogen gas to ammonia in a laboratory. in the, I think it was the in the 19th century. And that was considered a great achievement. And then industrially, people have learned how to convert nitrogen gas to ammonia and thus make nitrogen-rich fertilizers to supplement the amount of nitrogen fixed naturally. So that's the industrial way, that's the artificial way of making nitrogen. So the two natural ways of converting nitrogen is biologically, by nitrogen fixing bacteria that fix the nitrogen onto nodules or little parts of the root of the clover plant and the lupin plant. And secondly, by lightning striking a cloud and rain falls, and it captures the nitrogen due to the heat and energy of the lightning and transforms it into ammonia and nitrate. And that enters into the soil with the rainfall, okay? And the third way is artificially in laboratories or in factories. Now the second part, the second stage of the cycle of nitrogen is called decomposition. That is when the plant takes up the nitrogen compounds through their roots. And then animals eat these plants. And when the plants and animals die, or when the animals pass their stool, the nitrogen compounds in the organic matter means their skin or hair, the second step, their skin, their hair, their blood, their stool, whatever, enters into the soil where they're broken down by microorganisms. Microorganisms can be bacteria, they can be funguses, different things. And these microorganisms are called decomposers. So this decomposition in the earth produces ammonia naturally. And then the third process, or third part of the cycle of nitrogen is called nitrification. And nitrifying bacteria in the soil convert ammonia to nitrite, NO2, and then into nitrate, NO3. This process is called nitrification. You don't have to write all this down. Just you can ask your question. Go ahead. What's your question? No, it's happening, yes, due to the microorganisms. They're breaking down the nitrogen into the soil. The plants are capturing the nitrogen, and then the microorganisms breaks it down into the soil. And then there's certain bacteria in the soil that transforms these nitrogen compound, the nitrogen compounds into ammonia. And see, there are bacteria that, like for example, the plants absorb carbon dioxide from the air, and then they make energy, right? They end up making glucose, which is their energy. But bacteria, they use nitrate in the ground instead of oxygen to make their energy. So the plants get oxygen and get carbon dioxide and oxygen, and there's photosynthesis, and they make glucose. Whereas the certain bacteria, they use nitrate instead of oxygen to make their energy. and they release nitrogen gas into the atmosphere. So, you see, how is this happening? It's all been set up by Krishna. It didn't happen by accident. These are very complicated systems, and everything is interrelated. Okay, so that's called nitrification, denitrification. So you have, now let's go back to that original slide with the cycle, the nitrogen cycle. Okay, 1 second. So, first, there's fixation. And let's just do it the natural way. Lightning strikes, and rain falls down, and it brings down nitrogen from the gas state to a liquid state. And then, and it produces ammonia and nitrogen, nitrate and nitrate. And then the nitrogen fixing bacteria transform the transform the nitrogen that came down into ammonia or nitrate. And then the ammonia breaks down by certain types of bacteria and becomes nitrite and nitrate, and then it keeps going to denitrification bacteria.
There are three types of bacteria.
Yeah, there are all different types of bacteria in the ground. See, that's why plowing is not good. When you plow, you expose all those bacteria to the sun, they die. That's why they sell you NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium as a fertilizer, that are all artificially made in the factories, because by plowing, you destroy you interrupt these cycles. You say. So that's why the more you plow, the more fertilizer you have to use, and you have to buy the fertilizer. Whereas if you don't plow, then nature does it all for you. You see how you see now? See, this happened. That's a real thing that happened in the 1930s. Look this up. Look up the great well, anyway, in the 1930s, the farmers were just plowing and growing and not putting NPK into the soil, and there was a great the soil died. It died, and then there was like almost a famine because they couldn't grow much.
But the plowing actually helps in edification. Like you cannot, otherwise soil becomes very hard. If you don't plow, then it's not going to help you.
No.
It has to make.
No. It's the plowing that causes that. The soil doesn't naturally get hard like that.
Over a period of time, if you water.
No. Listen. When you cut the trees and you have open fields, and then you start plowing, eventually the soil dies because you've killed all the bacteria and you've stopped the cycles. What's it say? 1930s, there was a farming failure in the Midwest.
It caused a lot of dust problems.
Yeah, it became the Dust Bowl. They called it the Dust Bowl. Huh? Dust Bowl. Dustbowl. In the 1930s Dust Bowl in the Midwest, the United States. Now, in a forest, that never happens.
That was because they farmed, but they did not have anything left over on the topsoil, so the soil was loose, and that's how
No, but what happened is they cut the trees first. If you came to the West in 1840s, let's say you came to Washington State in 1840s, all trees, right? they had to cut the trees and get rid of the stumps and the roots of the trees to make open fields. Then, with the horses and the plows, they plowed the fields. And in the beginning, it was very fertile, right? Because it was forested, basically. But then, plowing, growing, and not putting anything back into the field, you ended up with dust. The soil died. And it caused a big problem in the 1930s in the United States. Then they started making this NPK fertilizer. Right?
So the cause, they're saying it was because of lack of indigenous grasses.
What?
Lack of indigenous grasses.
Indigenous. That means native.
Native grasses. So that's why the soil was just
No, but what does a native grass do? It grows, it dies, and it becomes composted.
it helps the soil.
No, it helps the soil because it fixes nitrogen and other things, and then it dies, and they don't rake it up. They just leave it there, and it composts over the winter. So every year you replenish. It's the carbon cycle and the nitrogen cycle, right? But if you get rid of all the weeds, let's say, you just grow your crops and you harvest the crops and you sell them, you're interrupting the nitrogen cycle. So their solution for that was NPK fertilizer, right? And that helped them grow things. But the problem was with NPK fertilizer, you're not growing. What you grow looks good, but it's not nutritionally potent. So you keep eating that type of food, eventually you get all kinds of physical problems that happen.
There is the same thing we do from the organic waste, right? By putting our cow dung and all those things, right? The urine and dung. We are introducing the NPK.
It's not NPK. That's the whole point. It's not just NPK. It's NPK plus another 80 minerals. NPK is a product, right? It has only those three things in it. And that's what they're, but for plants to grow and become nutritionally, let's say, intense or nutritionally dense, you need NPK, M, G, F, G, all these other minerals. So they don't need it in the same quantity as NPK, but they need trace quantities of these minerals. So eventually, you wear the soil out. It won't grow anything. It becomes a dust bowl. It becomes like a desert. That's the point. Yeah. That's what I do. Every year you make more compost. You don't disturb the micro. See, for this thing to work, you need soil bacteria, different types of soil bacteria that break things down. You're composting in the earth itself. And all the microorganisms, the worms, the bugs, the bacteria, the funguses, they're all working together to further these cycles, the carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle, the phosphorus cycle, the oxygen cycle, and so forth. You see. But by plowing and then getting rid of the trees, getting rid of everything, and just growing your crops and then selling the crops, you're sending all the NPK and all the other minerals out with the food. Eventually it wears out the soil, it becomes a desert. What does it say, Prabhu, about the Dust Bowl, 1930s? Let's listen to what this says.
So that was caused by the soil erosion because of the wind, because they would plow it and not have anything on top. So the soil becomes smooth because the wind is
That's an incomplete theory, Prabhu. It's an incomplete theory. Yeah, why was the wind able to blow the soil away? Well, because everything that holds it together, including the microorganisms, were dead.
I mean, that was because of the plant roots that, that hold the soil together. That is why we say, okay, the plants are important. If you don't have...
It's not just the soil. It's everything that's in the soil. The soil is made up of many, many things. You kill the bacteria, you kill the funguses, you kill the worms, you're going to end up with a desert. In a desert, what is it? There's just sand. And you can plant whatever you want. It's not going to grow. Right? But when you have the soil which is full of living entities, and each one of them is doing things, that are necessary for these cycles to be carried, then you can grow.
No, but we have seen that just without doing any work on the land,
Yeah.
it becomes like it's an infertile land. You have to keep doing all this.
No, that's
cycle.
because they cut all the trees. If you don't,
Actually, the farmland, if you just do years and years,
Yeah.
it just becomes infertile.
I don't agree with that.
Yeah, because you have to keep every time keep it ready for that for plantation.
If I don't do anything on my land, it just grows. Things just grow. And if I don't collect, anything when they die, it composts. And then over time, it's very fertile land. That's why they leave land fallow. Fallow means, for some years, they don't grow things on certain parts of the land.
Right.
And they let it
Alternate, yeah.
they let it rejuvenate itself.
Yeah.
You see, you leave nature alone. What happens when you leave it alone? It grows a forest with such diversity. You can't even imagine the diversity in a forest. It's not like these big foresting companies that cut down all the trees, and then they just plant one kind of tree.
But if you don't prepare the land, like the farm, the problem is the weeds comes up, right? And the
No.
weeds don't allow the proper seed. Then
No, but that's not. Listen. No, that's not the point. That's not the point.
Correct, but not the forest is this kind of weeds. I mean, most of them are
plowing
for the grain.
agriculture.
It doesn't come just
What?
If you want to grow something, then you have to plow to
No,
make
but
way
they
for it.
plowed. See, let's read this one second. The Dust Bowl was a period of severe dust storms that greatly damaged the ecology and agriculture of the American and Canadian prairies during the 1930s. Severe drought and a failure to apply dry land farming methods to prevent the Aeolian processes, I don't know what that means, Aeolian, caused the phenomenon. The drought came in three waves, 1934, 1936, and 1939 to 1940. But some regions of high plains experienced drought conditions for as many as 8 years, with insufficient understanding of the ecology of the plains. Farmers had conducted extensive deep plowing of the virgin topsoil of the Great Plains during the previous decade. This had displaced the native deep-rooted grasses that normally trapped soil and moisture even during periods of drought and high winds. The rapid mechanization of farm equipment, especially small gasoline tractors, and widespread use of the combine harvester contributed to farmers' decision to convert arid grassland to cultivated cropland. In other words, it was the plowing which kills all the microorganisms in the land that eventually caused the Dust Bowl, where nothing was growing, and there was drought, and even if you planted the seeds, they wouldn't grow. And basically, look this word up, Aeolian, Aeolian. What?
Study of wind.
It's study of wind? Okay. See, when you have fertile land with microorganisms, no matter what's growing, it could be crops or grass or weeds, the wind comes, it doesn't blow the earth away. But you have infertile land, due to over plowing and production, then it becomes like a desert, or they call it a dust bowl.
Thing is about study of wind in like changing the landscape
Yeah.
in the process the process of or wind's ability to change the environment.
Yeah, but look, it says here, with insufficient understanding of the ecology of the plains. Ecology means all the microorganisms, right, and all the cycles. Farmers had conducted extensive deep plowing of the virgin topsoils of the Great Plains during the previous decade. It means for 10 years they did this deep plowing and they grew things, right? And they destroyed the ecology, all the native plants, all the bacterias, all the worms and different things. And it turned that fertile land into a dust bowl, or basically almost like a desert.
Would you inform if you have harvested one season?
What? Yeah.
If you have grown the vegetables in the first season, so how you will do the next season? Like you will have more soil, no soil, like that. Or
Yeah.
how you will clean that previous plants, and you will just put more soil on top of it?
Yeah. Well, it's not soil, it's compost. Composted cow dung, composted, like what I do now. It's so simple now, the compost. I don't need a compost bin. I take everything from the kitchen that's being thrown away, all the vegetable cutting, take it to the farm. I just put it into the ground. Now I have to cover it, otherwise the rats will come. Just cover it and compost. If whatever I put in now, by next year it's composted. And when you plant your plants on top of that, they get nourishment as those cuttings have been composted. Right. And then the cow dung, I pack the cow dung on top of all my boxes or all the land, and by the spring, over winter, and by the spring, it becomes like a powder. It's all composted. It's a new layer of soil. But see, it's all because of that cycle. It's all because of the cycle and cooperation of bacteria and fungus
Understand?
and the insects and the worms.
I'm not gonna have any conflict with you, and you gave me the food at last. There are plenty of my friends who are better than you. Most of my friends have all girls this time. But you don't care. I don't care about your girls. That's true. That's so true. And Gene is actually does barely care. Like if I'm like fourth place, then I lose like 4 hours.
Get up. Get up. Really? Yashomati Nandana Brajavara Nagara Gokula Ranjana Kana Gopi Paranadhana Madana Manohara Kaliya Damana Vedana Yadamana Vedana Amala Harina Miya Vilasa Vipina Purandara Navina Nagara Bara Vamsi Vadana Suvasa Brajajana Palana Surakulana Shana Nanda Godhana Rakhavala Govinda Madhava Navanita Taskara Sundarananda Gopala Yamuna Tata Chara Gopi Vasana Hara Rasa Rasika Kripa Moya Shri Radha Vallabha Vrindavana Natabara Bhakti Vinoda Yashomati Nandana Brajavara Nagara Gokula Ranjana Kana Yashomati Nandana Brajavara Nagara Gokula Ranjana Kana Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Nila Madhava Nila Madhava Jaya Sita Ram, Jaya Sita Hanuman, Hanuman. Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha, Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha, Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha, Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha. Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadra. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
You have to do. Well, why me? Because you're cool, right? No, I'm not.
How about
Okay.
when you do it?
Okay, I'll
Singing
try.
but reading.
Okay, both of you come. Ria, come. Both of you.
Go.
I'll try. I mean, I know the thing.
Never do. Always.
Always say yes to Krishna sir. Yeah. Come closer. Come.
Jayom Vishnu Pada
Paramhamsa
Pava Jaka what? Jakacharya Ashota Sata Shri Srimad Swami Maharaj Prabhupada ki Jai. Jayom Vishnu Pada Paramhamsa
Ashota Sata Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्री सारी गौर भक्त वृंद की श्री श्री राधा गोप गोपीनाथ स्वाम कुंद राधा कुंद गिरी गोवर्धन की राधा नीलमाधव की श्री वृंदावन धाम की जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की गंगा माई की यमुना माई की तुलसी देवी की श्री हरि नाम संकीर्तन की बृहद मृदंगा की या Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki. All glories to some of the devotees. All glories to some of the devotees. All glories to some of the devotees. Gaur Premanandi, Aribol. All glories to Guru and Sri Guru. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
That was.
I did so bad.
Oh no. Yeah, see, that's why I shouldn't do it.
I practiced.
I said yaya.
Yaya.
You practiced that whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it said yaya in here.
Yeah, it says yaya. Where did it say? It says yaya.
Where is it?
Sri Yaya.
Where does it say Mridanga?
Yaya. Mridanga Yaya. Yaya.
No, it's called. It's called called it's Jaya.
It should be Jaya.
It's a printing mistake.
I think so. This is my guess.
No, it is a
Yeah, yeah.
printing mistake.
It's a printing mistake. Yeah.
So from next time onwards, both of you will repeat.
I practice the whole thing.
Every time the other folks. Arush
No.
No, nobody
Then
has
Agastya has to do it.
Yeah, we should take
Yeah,
turns.
I'm gonna take
I
Yeah,
say like Kava Jai.
so that everybody will get chance and everybody will
Kava
have some.
Jai. I'll do the same.
We'll just
Yeah.
say that all kids have to
Empty
take
bill.
turns in singing Yashovati Nandana and doing Prema.
I sing way too much.
You don't sing at all. I've never heard you sing.
I only heard you sing once. What?
No, he sang like 3 or 4 times.
Ten times?
Which has the sense?
Yeah, I sang more than 10
10 is the zero on the right or the left?
Okay, so
She just sang today. She never sings. You have to push her.
Georgie asked that before I sing. What's up?
You have to keep it safe. I'll show you where this is.
So you're on better than
I have Yes, go.
Oh, you got it.